The protagonist was Athanasia, whose name meant eternity. She was a princess, the daughter of the emperor and empress, who had lost her life in childbirth. Before dying, Diana, her mother, left her a magical kiss, although it's unclear what exactly she passed on to her daughter. After the empress's death, the emperor ordered everything burned and destroyed, leaving only the child, Princess Athanasia. The problem was that the emperor showed no affection for her, leaving her in the care of servants who also didn't care, thinking, if even her father ignores her, why should we pay attention? Since she was a baby, Athanasia had managed to enter a magical world, where a mysterious voice called to her. There, she found a book in which she could see her entire life. So, everything that will happen to me is already written here, she reflected, astonished. The book revealed that, when she grew up, she would be accused of using black magic, and her own father would condemn her to exile in a tower, never to leave. The princess lived in a world where everyone possessed magic, but she did not. Her father's cold, distant gaze transformed the premonition into a true nightmare, repeated every night in her dreams. Fortunately, there was someone who cared for her with affection. Lillian. This servant had been a friend of her mother's and, although of noble birth, had abandoned everything to remain in the palace with Athanasia. She was the only one who treated her well, protected her, and paid attention to her. Even as a baby, Athanasia was already aware of the future and knew that dangers surrounded her. Although she could not defend herself, she understood that she would need to find a way to change the course of her life. Her greatest obstacle was Claude, the emperor, considered by all to be extremely powerful. He can destroy an entire kingdom single-handedly. And that's my father, the little princess thought in frustration. 3 years passed, and the atmosphere around the girl had become more welcoming. Many new maids came to work there, enchanted by the sweetness and beauty of Athanasia, now 3 years old. However, among them was one who was only interested in money, while the others dedicated themselves to making the place beautiful with flowers and decorations. This maid watched secretly, searching for valuable objects the emperor had purchased for the late empress. One day, Athanasia approached and asked what she was looking for. The servant, believing her to be merely a gardener's daughter, replied, "Show me somewhere where there is gold." Athanasia, silently, thought, "She just wants to steal." Then she led her to the sunflowers, the wheat, and the fresh bread, pretending not to understand what she really wanted. Then, with calculated innocence, she commented that there were no great treasures left in the palace, but that there were still utensils adorned with precious stones. The servant was surprised by the girl's intelligence, believing they both shared the same interest in stealing, unaware that she was standing before the princess. When the maid entered the kitchen and began filling bags with jewelry and ornaments, Athanasia went up to where they were stored and put everything in her pockets. The woman tried to attack her, demanding that she return them, but the princess threw all the arrangements and decorations they had set up on her. The noise attracted the other maids, who caught her trying to harm the child. She was soon removed from the palace. However, Athanasia knew it wasn't by chance. She thought, if I hadn't acted like that, Lillian would have been attacked tonight. Indeed, in her vision of the future, the same servant tried to rob and stab Lillian. Therefore, it had all been done on purpose, keeping the recovered jewels for herself. Athanasia reflected that she would need them in her future, knowing the cruel fate that awaited her. Meanwhile, Claude continued his duties as emperor. Felix, his assistant, reported that someone had attempted to break into his daughter's home, and that the girl had successfully thwarted the threat. He expected a reaction from the sovereign, but Claude remained indifferent. In another distant place, a man sensed that something in the fate of the Obelia Empire was changing, and that the source of this was the palace. Through the book, Athanasia understood that she was merely a secondary character in that story. In her dreams, she already knew she would meet her father when she was 8. He will be the only family I have left, she thought. From that moment on, she would begin her effort to impress him, yearning to be by his side. However, without magic, this goal seemed unattainable. The worst would come at age 12, when she was introduced to society. At that moment, she would discover a painful truth. Her father also had another daughter, named Jeanette. She was a graceful princess, charming in appearance, possessed of a natural elegance, and possessed magical abilities. Perhaps she had even, at some point, received her father's love. Precisely for these reasons, little Athanasia did not want to experience a cruel fate. Nor did she wish to be rejected or exiled. Therefore, before her 8th birthday, she had been carefully gathering all the coins and jewels she could save, thinking that, when the time came, she would be able to escape her father and live in peace. In her plans, it would not be just her who left. Lilium would also accompany her, supporting her, and together they would take all the treasures Athanasia had accumulated since childhood. While reflecting on this, she ended up staining her fingers with chocolate, as she always took the opportunity to ask the maids for sweets and desserts. It was not just for pleasure, but also because she hid gems and jewels in the kitchen utensils. After eating, she went to a fountain to wash her hands, and there she could see her own reflection. Her face strongly resembled her mother's, but her eyes were the emperor's, eyes that shone like precious stones. Athanasia thought that perhaps it was precisely because she had inherited only the look and not the magic that her father despised her. Maybe he hates me for that, he mused silently. Walking through the forest, she came to a spot where she hid her jewelry, unintentionally startling a passing squirrel. Continuing on, she found a place that looked nothing like the ruby palace where she lived. It was like a vast, empty vault. Back at the palace, she heard from the maids that His Majesty the Emperor had ordered an inspection of every room after the incident with the maid who had tried to rob him. They also said they would search every corner of the princess's room, where she kept her precious treasures. Worried, Athanasia decided to act quickly. She put the jewels on herself and headed for the forest to hide them with the rest. However, upon arriving, she found the same squirrel digging and trying to unearth what she had buried. I can't lose this, she thought, handing it a peanut to distract it, and running in search of another hiding place. Arriving again at the place that resembled a vault, she decided to leave everything there. As she walked deeper, she found small golden figures shaped like cherubs. Could they be real gold? She thought, running toward them and even biting one to confirm. It was at that moment that she came face to face with Claude, the emperor, her own father. It was the first time he had seen her in so long, and he immediately noticed the resemblance to the empress. For Athanasia, it was a shock. I wasn't supposed to meet him until I was 8. What's going on? She thought, frightened. Claude wasn't a caring man, and his expression made it unclear what he would do next. Felix, who was nearby, looked concerned when he saw the little girl before the sovereign. The emperor tried to remember her name, the name he had heard from the servants when the empress had passed away. Approaching Athanasia, he surprised everyone by saying, almost casually, that she was chubby, firmly pulling her cheeks. He then ordered Felix to prepare tea, as he would be having tea with his daughter. Something sweet was served, but Athanasia remained in shock. To her, this man was the same man who would, in the future, hate her, exile her, and condemn her for black magic. What she saw before her seemed impossible. Claude, for his part, watched her silently, hesitantly, wondering if she would be able to speak. Yes, she can, Athanasia replied timidly, while Felix explained that small children could feel shy around strangers. Angered, Claude expelled Felix so he could be alone with his daughter. The emperor then commented on her name. He said that Athanasia was a grand name, laden with meanings such as eternity and immortality, worthy of heirs to the throne. Not even I was given such an imposing name, he confessed, remembering that it was not his son destined to inherit power, but rather his brother, the true successor, who had become a tyrant. Claude had murdered him and, as a result, had ended up taking the throne. This troubled him deeply, for, although emperor, he did not possess a name as noble as his own daughter's. Thinking of Diana, the empress, his expression changed. Remembering how she had chosen the name Athanasia, he asked who had taught her how to behave, and the girl replied that it was Lilium. Claude then revealed that he remembered the day Lilium had come running to him, asking permission to care for the princess, something he had accepted. Soon after, the emperor asked a direct question. He wanted to know if Athanasia knew who he was. Confused, she didn't know how to respond. Call him your majesty, father? Without much thought, she blurted out, in a sweet voice, that he was her father. Oh, I messed up. He must punish me for this, she thought distressedly. But Claude's reaction was unexpected. His eyes shone, as if he had enjoyed hearing his daughter call him that. Felix eventually led Athanasia back to the servants, who were eagerly searching for her. He informed everyone that His Majesty would certainly wish to see her again, which surprised the servants. Soon, Athanasia and Lilium were summoned to Claude, who thanked the maid for caring for the girl all these years. Athanasia, inwardly, couldn't believe it. He never cared about me. How can he act like this now? She thought, constantly remembering the future she knew. But in the present, Claude claimed he couldn't care for her because the responsibilities of the throne took him away, and that from then on she would live by his side, under his protection, like a true princess. The news delighted everyone around her, except Athanasia herself, who still believed her father was a demon in disguise. From then on, her routine changed. Every day she drank tea with Claude, received the treatment befitting her position, and was accompanied by attentive maids. However, deep inside her, her desire remained the same. Before she turned 8, she would escape that place with everything she had gathered. Claude, on the other hand, became increasingly intrigued by his daughter. He discovered that she loved shiny things and began to grow closer. Thus began the days when Athanasia visited her father. Nervous in his presence, she made small mistakes, blurting out awkward gestures that, despite themselves, seemed charming. Claude didn't scold her or blame her. On the contrary, he seemed to enjoy it, and it was at this point that a spark of hope arose in Athanasia. Perhaps, somehow, her father would come to love her. Then came the invitation for a trip to the lake. Lilium carefully prepared Athanasia, making her even more beautiful. With Felix by their side, they met Claude again, who, upon seeing her, commented that she looked increasingly healthy and plump. To any older princess, this would have been offensive, but to Athanasia, who was only 5, it still sounded like a compliment. Athanasia never quite knows how to behave around him, but she ends up saying he's also very handsome. Whenever she says something like that, or simply addresses him, everyone around her tenses, watching the cold, heavy gazes Claude gives her. Still, the day seemed to have a special air. They remain in the garden, surrounded by flowers, and Athanasia enjoys every moment, feeling happy until it's time to board the small boat, reserved just for her and Claude. Deep down, she feels a certain fear. After all, she can't swim. Felix tries to reassure her that nothing bad could happen, as she would be by her father's side. However, he regrets speaking so quickly when he sees Claude holding the girl as if she were some burden, without the slightest delicacy. The atmosphere becomes uncomfortable. He can't find the right words, but seeing Claude's golden locks moving in the wind, Athanasia shyly comments that his hair is radiant and very beautiful, adding that she loves it too. Deep down, the girl recognizes that he truly is beautiful, a deep honey blonde, but at the same time, she can't erase the memory that he will be the one to condemn her to exile. Silently, she wonders how that boat moves without oars, until she notices that Claude seems to be steering it with magic. When she looks into his eyes, she discovers they are incredibly blue, clear as 2 sapphires, and wonders if her own would be similar. Suddenly, a small, glowing lotus catches her eye. She even smells a gentle scent. She wants to reach out and touch it, but as she overextends herself on the edge, she loses her balance and falls into the water. Within seconds, algae and aquatic plants wrap around her body, dragging her down into the depths. Athanasia believes this could be the end, even though she already knows how her story will end. The desire still rises in her heart for her father to dive in and save her. However, she remembers that clinging to hope can be futile. But it's Claude who jumps into the lake and rescues her. He pulls her out with a firm grip and, using his magic, casts a spell that dries her clothes. It wasn't meant to hurt her, just to protect her. His expression betrays irritation, not with her, but with the entire situation. Soon after, he declares to Felix that the next day he will teach his daughter to swim, as it would make no sense to leave her at the mercy of such danger. Felix watches in silence, feeling the weight of his words. However, Claude also seems to carry something dark within him, a kind of magical burden that affects him in ways still unknown. After this scare, Athanasia falls ill. She has a fever, but is cared for by Lilian, who explains that the lotuses are magical and often deceive their victims, luring them to the bottom of the lake through illusions. Confused, Athanasia asks why such dangerous things exist, and Lilian explains that only people without magic are affected. Since almost everyone in the castle is noble and possesses power, they needn't worry. It is then that Athanasia realizes the problem is that she is the most fragile. That same night, Claude returns to the lake. He walks to the center, where the lotuses float, and faces the strange presence that isn't quite a creature, but rather displays before him the image of Diana, Athanasia's mother. In Claude's thoughts, it's clear he's tried to stifle his feelings since Diana's death, erasing any emotion. However, now that he lives with his daughter, he realizes he feels no hatred. Felix also witnesses the scene, but Claude remains in control, refusing to allow the entity to harm him. He simply states that there are matters that need to be resolved. The next morning, a maid rushes to Athanasia's room to announce that there are many new servants. When they emerge, they find an entire group gathered, declaring that from now on they will all serve the princess. To top it all off, Felix kneels before her and announces that he will be Her Highness's temporary personal guard. Thus conclude the first 3 chapters of Princess Charming. These were chapters full of emotion and fun moments. Soon we are told a little more about what actually happened between Claude, the Emperor, and Diana, as some prefer to call her. For now, little Athanasia dreams of someone with a familiar face, though she cannot clearly remember who it is. Upon waking, she realizes she is being carried by Felix, who explains that His Majesty wishes to have breakfast with her. The girl wonders why the Emperor, someone so important, is not guarded by soldiers, and why even Felix protects her so much. He only replies that Claude does not need that, for he trusts his magic, and drops the subject. Soon, he takes her to the Emperor's chamber, saying that Claude would surely be happy to be awakened by his little daughter on a beautiful spring morning. Athanasia thinks, nervously, that waking the Emperor is a huge responsibility and fears what might happen. Athanasia observes the room with curiosity before gathering courage to approach Claude. She notices a large map made entirely of gold and is fascinated by its details. Looking around, she finds the Emperor asleep in an armchair, not in his bed, which surprises her. Near him, there is a portrait that catches her attention. When she faces that painting, she thinks that man looks exactly like the figure who, in her dreams, had banished her. She approaches slowly and imagines, in silence, that perhaps this is her chance to get revenge, even if only playfully. With that in mind, she touches his face and gently pulls his cheeks, amused to see the Emperor sleep so deeply. When she realizes he begins to wake up, she hums a small lullaby, hoping he falls asleep again. The plan works and Claude keeps sleeping peacefully. Later, he wakes up with flushed cheeks, remembering what the girl had done. Embarrassed, Athanasia tries to change the subject, commenting that the palace has many things she had never seen before. Claude, still with a faint smile, says she is allowed to explore as much as she wants. At that moment, Felix appears, informing him that a nobleman wishes to have an audience with the Emperor and also with the princess. Claude accepts, but decides to handle the matter first. Distracted, Athanasia hears Claude say that she must have breakfast with him every morning, which surprises her, since she already had permission to walk freely. She starts exploring the palace in search of a portrait of her mother. In her dreams, Diana's image appears, but her face is always blurred, which unsettles her. While wandering through the corridors, Athanasia finds old portraits rich in detail, but none show the woman she seeks. After much searching, she reaches a distant room where there is a painting covered by a cloth. When she removes it, she sees her mother's name written on the frame, but the picture is burned. Only parts of the face and dress remain visible. The girl feels her heart tighten and thinks, sadly, that perhaps her father ordered everything that reminded him of Diana to be destroyed. While reflecting, she hears voices in the hallway. Some nobles gossip maliciously that the king might want another queen soon and mock the fact that Athanasia has no magic. One of them, sarcastically, says that if the emperor once had a dancer queen, anyone can sit on the throne. At that moment, Claude appears before them with a cold stare. The 3 kneel immediately. He orders them never to mention Diana's name again. Watching from afar, Athanasia shivers and thinks that name must cause her father great pain. After everything, she returns to her room, gazing at the burned painting and wondering who her mother truly was. Tired, she decides to rest, and, remembering the lullaby she used to make her father sleep, she softly sings until she falls asleep. The next morning, Athanasia wakes up early, for she must once again have breakfast with Claude. She enters the room with a firm posture, trying to appear confident. When she sees him, she smiles and makes a graceful bow, which delights the maids. Claude, however, remains silent. During the meal, she is the one who talks almost all the time, while the emperor only watches her. The girl thinks, silently, whether her father gets tired of listening to her, or if his silence is because of her mother's memory. Then, she comments on the tea he usually drinks and asks if she may try it. Felix tries to stop her, saying it is too strong a drink, but Claude allows him to prepare a cup for her. Upon tasting it, Athanasia closes her eyes and says the flavor feels like flowers blooming inside her mouth. The remark makes Claude freeze for a moment, for those were the exact words Diana once said to him. Without saying anything, the emperor changes the subject, and Athanasia realizes she might have said something wrong, though she does not understand why. Later, the girl, still sad, burns some drawings she had made of her mother. The ashes are carried by the wind, but someone, hidden, collects every fragment. As days pass, Claude stops appearing at breakfast. Athanasia begins losing her appetite and avoids going to the table. One day, while walking down the corridors, she hears Felix talking with Lillian. He says it is normal for the princess to want to know about her mother, since everything related to her was destroyed in the palace. Felix mentions he intends to ask Claude to use magic and show the girl his own memories of Diana. Hearing that, Athanasia runs to them and begs them not to do it. Frightened, she says she does not want her father to hate her because of this matter. Felix kneels and gently says that the emperor never hated either her or Diana, and that he had promised the queen to protect his daughter. To prove it, he shows her the reason Claude needs no guards. Garnet Palace is protected by a powerful magical barrier, impossible to cross for anyone with ill intentions. He casts a spell so she can see the shining dome that shields the whole place. He explains that only two people can enter freely, Athanasia and the former queen, because Claude trusted them completely. The girl then thinks, confused, why he does not want to hear anything more about Diana. Meanwhile, the emperor, alone, reflects. He was the one who gathered the ashes of the drawings his daughter had burned and, with his magic, restored each of them. He looks at the recreated portraits and thinks that he might still need one more year to forget her to forget Diana. The reason, however, remains a mystery. At that moment, Athanasia enters the room, encouraged by Felix, who had told her that her father would like to see her. The girl approaches timidly, saying she had not seen him for days and that she missed him. She apologizes for interrupting, but says she just wanted to see him. Claude watches her in silence, and when she thinks of stepping back, he holds her in his arms and murmurs that she is becoming bolder, as bold as her mother. Athanasia smiles, not fully understanding what he meant, while Claude simply embraces her, keeping the thought to himself. Claude carefully guides her to the bed, commenting that she probably did not rest well during the night. He then lies down beside her and asks her to sing the same song he had sung earlier, explaining that he wants to stay awake when she decides to get revenge by pinching his face. Athanasia hesitates for a moment and replies that she had already forgotten the melody. But Claude, with a slight smile and a playful tone, reminds her that lying to the king would be considered a crime. Faced with this, she sighs and begins to sing, while he discreetly uses his magic to transform the room into a serene and cozy setting, bathed in a soft light that invites sleep. As her voice fills the air, Claude simply observes in silence, feeling a rare peace. Gradually, he casts a spell that allows him to project some of his memories, and Athanasia begins to see them as if she were part of them. In the images that appear, she sees her mother smiling, radiant as she had never imagined before. Claude also watches these memories and realizes, once again, how he has always been a reserved man, with a serious and distant gaze. The song gradually fades, and the room becomes even calmer. In a few moments, the two end up falling asleep side by side, enveloped in a sweet and protective silence. Thus ends the 4th chapter of The Enchanted Princess.